Hey everybody, Chris Baker here from LuckyGunner.com. Last time I showed you how to mount an optic on your rifle, and today I am going to show you how to sight in that optic. Sighting it in just means that we're going to make sure the point of aim is the same as our point of impact. That point is known as the zero, and so another name for the sighting in process is zeroing the rifle. The demo gun I'm using is the same as the one I had in the mounting video. It's a Bravo Company AR-15 with a Swamp Fox Optics 1-to-10 power Arrowhead scope. The process I'm about to show you should work even if you're using a different type of rifle or optic. We're going to start off by getting a rough zero. Before we make the fine adjustments, we want to get our point of impact somewhere within a few inches of our point of aim. Like everything I'm going to do today, there are several ways to accomplish this. I usually like to start sighting in with my target really close, like about 10 or 15 yards. If we start with the target way out there at 100, our bullets might not even be hitting paper and we won't know which way to adjust the optic. At 10 yards, that's not usually a problem. I'm going to be shooting from the bench today since I've already got it set up, but you can probably do this first part from a standing position if you want to, since the target is so close. Now I know at some shooting ranges, you're only allowed to place your target at certain predetermined distances. You might not be able to set up a target at 10 yards. So if, for example, you've got a minimum range of 50 or 100 yards, your best bet for this first step is to just use a really big target, or you can set up a few targets side by side. Another way to get a rough zero is to bore sight the rifle. Now you can do that with a laser bore sighting tool, but there is an old school way of doing it that doesn't require one of those. It doesn't work with all rifles. You can do it with most bolt actions, and you can do it with an AR-15 if you remove the upper receiver first. Bore sighting is just where you remove the bolt and you look through the bore and find the target. And then you lock the rifle into that position as best you can. Then you adjust your scope so that the crosshairs are also lined up with the target. That'll usually get you pretty close. Sometimes I will do this with a bolt action rifle since it's usually really easy to remove the bolt. The hardest part is keeping the rifle still while you adjust the scope. Bore sighting is much easier with a rifle vise like the one I used in our workbench in the video last time. Bipod can also help if you don't have a vise. When you're doing the rough zero, you don't have to use your good ammo. We're going to do our final sighting in with our hunting load or match load or self-defense load or whatever load we want the rifle to be set up for. But since we're just trying to get in the general vicinity of a zero for right now, we can use our everyday range ammo. Today I'm going to be using some MagTech 55 grain full metal jacket for the rough zero, and then for my final zero I've got a few rounds of Black Hills 77 grain open tip match that I have been carefully rationing for a while. For my up close target, I am just going to adjust my optic all the way down to the lowest magnification setting. In this case that is 1 power, and then I'll just shoot a 3-round group. This can be a real quick group. The holes don't have to all be touching or anything. It's a rough zero, so don't overthink it at this point. Okay, so it looks like I am high and to the right. Now the reason I do 3 rounds for this is because I just mounted this optic. If I can't get 3 rounds at least fairly close together at this distance, then it means something's probably loose. I need to go back and check my mount and check all my screws. In this case, I've got a pretty decent little group, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to start making my first adjustments on the optic. Now the left to right horizontal adjustment is called the windage. The vertical adjustment is called elevation. With the rough zero, I want to get my windage pretty close to the middle. The elevation is going to change depending on how far out my target is. So for that, I just want to get it kind of sort of close to the middle. ARs have the line of sight is way above the bore. So when you're up close at 10 yards, your point of aim is going to be a couple of inches above your point of impact. That is normal. For non-ARs, where the optic is a little closer to the bore, you want a little less offset, maybe closer to 1 inch. If your scope has capped turrets, go ahead and remove those caps and just leave them off until you're totally done sighting in the gun. This optic has exposed turrets. It's actually got this handy little feature where you have to pull them up to turn so they can't be turned accidentally, which is nice. But with most optics, the elevation knob is the adjustment knob on the top, and the windage is the knob on the right. On some of the open emitter reflex sights, especially the compact pistol sights, you will have adjustment screws instead of knobs. They might not necessarily be on the top and the right. If there is a knob on the left side of your scope, that's usually the brightness adjustment. On a very high power scope, this knob might instead be the parallax adjustment. Now, I'm not going to cover parallax today, but if that is something your scope has, you should really read up on how to adjust it properly, because it can definitely have a big effect on how your zero ends up working out. Now, with most scopes, every click on the adjustment knobs corresponds to a certain amount of shift in your point of aim. This scope, for example, says 1 click equals 1/2 MOA. That stands for minute of angle. So a half a minute of angle just happens to translate to about a 1/2 inch at 100 yards. So if I needed to shift my point of impact to the right 1 inch on a target at 100 yards, I would turn my windage knob counterclockwise 2 clicks. But here at 10 yards, each click is only 1/20th of an inch. Now, I could go and measure my group and then do the math to figure out exactly how many clicks I need to move the bullet to the center, but honestly, that math almost never works out when you're this close to the target, so I'm just gonna crank on it for a while and see what happens. I need to go left, so I'm gonna turn my turret a bunch of clicks left, and then I need to go down a little bit, so I'm gonna turn this down a few clicks. All right, now I'm just gonna fire another single round. I'm not gonna bother with a 3-round group this time, and we'll see where that puts me on the target. Okay, so I'm not gonna mess with my elevation. That's about where I want it. When we get out to 100, I'm gonna want it to be right on the point of aim. So for the windage, it looks like I went a little over half the distance I need to go, so I'm gonna go a few more clicks left, maybe 6 or 7. And fire one more round. And if that's pretty close to the middle, then I'll go ahead and move out to my full distance. Okay, so that's pretty close. I'm not gonna do any more with the rough zero. That's about where I want it to be. I'm gonna go ahead and move out to my full distance. So what distance should that be? Well, that depends. The simple answer is 100 yards, and that's what we're gonna use today. The complicated answer is that there are a lot of competing philosophies about what distance you should zero your rifle depending on the cartridge you're shooting and the approximate range that you expect to be using your rifle. That is not something I can really get into today. So to keep things simple, I am just gonna do a 100-yard initial sight in. If I decide to zero for a different distance later on, that's actually pretty easy to do if I already have my 100-yard zero set up. If you're shooting a 22, you might wanna use a 50-yard zero. For centerfire rifles, it's hard to go wrong with 100 yards as a starting point. For this distance, I am gonna go ahead and switch over to my match ammo. I am still shooting from the bench. I wanna remove as much potential for human error as possible. If you don't have an actual bench rest of some kind, just get in the most stable position you can. That could be a table with a backpack or just a nice solid prone position. I'm also gonna be using a different target. I like to use some kind of grid target like these so that I can tell exactly how far off the bullseye my shots are. Today I'm really cheating because I printed out these 1/2-inch grid targets, which corresponds nicely to the 1/2 MOA per click adjustments on my scope. The grid is even labeled to tell me exactly what adjustments I need to make on the optic. So this should be fairly accurate as long as I'm sighting it in at 100 yards, but we'll see what actually happens when I put rounds down range. Just like with my rough zero, I'm gonna start out with a 3-round group. I've got a few targets already set up and my spotting scope, so I don't have to go back and forth to measure and pace my targets. But if you have to do that, that's fine. Hopefully I get a nice group somewhere on the paper or at least on the cardboard. If I don't get a very tight group, then I need to go back and troubleshoot to see what else might be going on before I continue trying to sight in the optic. If my mounts are loose, if my bench is unstable, if I'm just not having a good day on the trigger, then there's no sense in trying to zero if I can't get a consistent group. Okay, so based on what I'm seeing in my spotting scope, I've got a halfway decent little group. It's a little over 2 inches, which is not bad. So I'm going to start with the center of that group, and it looks like my my middle shot is right in the center of the group. Based on that middle position, I'm going to adjust my optic. Now it looks like I need to come 7 clicks up and 4 clicks to the left, and that should put me close to the middle. So on here, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hey guys, Chris from the present here. I don't know if you caught my brain fart just then. The target was telling me that I needed to go left 4 clicks, and I even said I needed to go left 4 clicks, but when I actually adjusted the scope, I went 7 clicks. And we didn't catch that until I started editing the video. As you'll see in a minute, that put my next group to the left of the bullseye. At the time, I had just assumed that was either because of some inconsistency with the ammo or because the click adjustments on the scope were not quite accurate. That's something that happens sometimes. Actually, based on where that next group ended up, it would have been pretty much dead center if I had only done 4 clicks instead of 7. So blame this one on me. It is not Swamp Fox's fault. Their scope seems to be pretty solid so far. But I am going to go ahead and play the rest of the sighting in process as we filmed it with that mistake in there. The reality is that getting your group dead center after the first adjustment doesn't happen as often as we would like. Sometimes it's because you mess up your math or you miscount clicks, but sometimes there are just a multitude of other reasons why things might not line up just right on your first try. The way I ended up handling it here, I think, is a pretty good rule of thumb. If your math doesn't seem to be working out the way it should, be conservative with your adjustments and don't burn too many rounds chasing the perfect 0. Okay, back to the video. Now I'm going to shoot another 3-round group. Hopefully it'll be closer to the center and we'll be working our way toward an actual 0. Okay, so that group looks pretty good. It's about 1 inch. And our elevation is pretty close to where we want it. Now, it's not exactly in the middle, but I'm within a 1/2 inch. I'm not gonna try and get it perfectly in the center. You could chase that all day and never quite get there. This is not a precision rifle. I'm not trying to get dead center on my 0. That's close enough for me. Now, my windage is still off a little bit. I went 4 clicks left, and that actually took me to the left of the bullseye. So instead of going back the number of clicks that the target's indicating, I'm just gonna go back half that. So I went 4 left, I'm gonna go 2 back to the right. So we'll go 1, 1, 2, and see where that puts us. Hopefully that'll get me right in the middle. Okay, so it looks like we got another nice little group there. I'm still just a hair to the left, but honestly, I'm not gonna touch it. I feel pretty good about where it is right now. If I were gonna make any more adjustments, I would wait until I did some more groups farther back, like at 200 or 300. If I'm still to the left, then I might come over a click. But you don't wanna be chasing it and trying to get just that perfect group at 100 yards. You're probably never gonna get there. Then you might have to adjust it again anyway if you go farther back. So for 100 yard 0, I'm pretty happy with that, and it's close enough to the center for me. Okay, so I'm pretty much done with my 100 yard 0. If I want the rifle to be zeroed for 200, then I've got a good starting point with that. It wouldn't hurt for me to shoot 1 more group at 100 just to confirm that I had a good 0. Otherwise, I think we're pretty much done. Guys, I hope you found that helpful. If so, if you wouldn't mind, subscribe to our channel if you have not already, and hit that like button. Really appreciate it.